All right, Pete, the recording is on. Why don't you take it away?
Hello, everybody. My name is Peter McCullough. I am the product owner for the CA Endevor SCM product. And I would like to talk with you today about the benefits of incremental release delivery, a little bit about the background of how it works and how it fits in with our Agile process, and then follow up with what we're doing with version 18, the incremental deliveries that we've published so far. So I would encourage you to, if you're not on mute, if you could get off mute. If you have a question, go ahead and ask me questions as we go through the presentation so that it will just be easier to handle them in line rather than handle them at the end. So as long as there's no background noise, I encourage you to go off mute. So as I said, we're going to be talking about the incremental release process and then what's new with Endevor version 18. This presentation was largely given earlier this year, and there were some questions and comments in the community about details with the incremental release process. So we decided to go ahead and do the presentation one more time to make sure that we answered any questions that people may have. So the whole purpose of incremental releases are to enable us to deliver features to you faster. In the old days, we would use a waterfall development methodology, which would usually go to a year and a half of development before we would release the new features, and then we would get feedback, and you would not see any new features for the next year and a half till the next release came out. But with our incremental releases, that allows us to deliver features as soon as you think that they're sufficient. They may not all be completely finished in terms of functionality, but as soon as our validation partners, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, when the Agile process have told us that there's enough functionality, we will go ahead and publish those. The idea of publishing them early is that it allows us to get feedback from you earlier and us to make adjustments as necessary. As we all know, until you actually try using something, you don't really know what it's going to be like. So that's one of the key values of the Agile delivery or incremental delivery process. And with the incremental delivery methodology, we're going to continue this process until all of the features that we have planned for a incremental release, in this case version 18 I'm talking about today, have been delivered. At that point, we will deem that GA complete, and after that, only fixed PTFs or correction PTFs will be published for the GA complete release, and we'll issue an end of service alert for the prior GA complete release. And that's basically the same process we go through today, or we'd gone through before. Was when we go GA, we would announce the end of service release for the prior GA release, and normally give 12 to 18 months notice for people to transition. Then we start the next incremental delivery process. So the thing about incremental releases is that they're fully supported, that this is not beta. Even though the features are new, we've gone through a lot of internal testing to ensure that the quality, they're not going to destabilize your implementation. They're fully supported, documented. So but while an incremental release is in the active phase, both features and fixes are published via PTFs. And we've heard from a lot of customers that PTF delivery is actually a very nice way to do it because it is much less disruptive on the side of the implementation of the new features, rather than putting in new releases and going through all of the work involved and all the process involved in installing a new release. Installing a PTF is a much easier way to do it. As I said earlier, when an incremental release becomes GA complete, only fixes are published at that point. And automated regression tests are helping us keep that quality intact. So how incremental delivery process works is that we start out with what we call an incremental 0. And that is usually the base or the foundation for the release, and it's usually the same functionality as the prior GA complete release. in the case of version 18, I'll use 18 because that's what's currently being worked on today. When we created the incremental 0 for 18, it was largely based on what was GA in version 17. We did, and I'll get into a little bit of detail, we did make a few changes that we needed to do at a release boundary, but we did not add new features. So once we have the incremental release published and people can install that and then get through all that process I was just talking about through a new release installation and get that behind them, then they'll be ready to install feature PTS as those are published. We have end-of-sprint review meetings with our validation partners, and if you have questions about that, I can talk about that later, and we'll be talking about later how you can become a validation partner to determine the MVP status of new features. We actually have the engineers on the calls or the WebEx, and we do demonstrations, and it's a very interactive type of meeting. Usually goes for an hour, hour and a half, where we go through the work that had been done during the sprint process, and that's usually about a 4-week period worth of work. Once the features have been deemed MVP or minimal viable product or functionality, we will publish each of those features as a individual PTF, and then ultimately we'll create an incremental PTF, incremental delivery PTF, which will serve as a cumulative roll-up of all of the published features and fixes up until that point in time. So for people that are interested in a particular PTF and they want to go ahead and do it early, they can install the PTF for the individual feature, or they can wait for the incremental delivery PTF. As I said, the incremental delivery PTFs are cumulative, and if you happen to miss one, if you went from, you installed the base 0 and 2 and 3 came out and you didn't get to do anything until incremental delivery 4, you could pick up right there and install 4, and you'd have all of the functionality that had been delivered prior to that. One of the good things about the release identifier or the incremental delivery PTF is we introduced the release identifier with that, and on the Endevor with version 18, on the Endevor primary panels and ISPF, the Eclipse UI, the batch reports all have the release identifier 18.0.0 or XX. In the case of the slide, it says 07, which happens to be the current, or will be the current incremental release. So with that, you'll know exactly what your users or what release you're running with. Are there any questions on so far? John,
Peter, there actually are a couple of questions that have come into the Q&A box. Let me read them to you. This is from John. So please ensure at some point during the presentation an explanation of the relationship with CA recommended support is covered. This is critical to my site's ability to maintain all CA software.
Okay. Thank you. I guess John can't get off mute, or doesn't have an audio connection. That's a good question. The CARS process, which is in place for validating product maintenance, does not support incremental delivery PTS at this point. The idea is that the CARS process, the way it's implemented is that PTS are installed on an LPAR that we have at CA, and it is tested for a period of time, usually many weeks before the PTF is deemed certified and ready to be eligible as a CARS item. With our incremental delivery process, we generally deliver PTS or may deliver PTS more quickly than the CARS certification process allows. So in this case, we don't have a expedited CARS, and CARS so far is only supported for or used for GA complete release maintenance. I hope that made sense. If not, we can follow up with that question. Len, was there another question?
Yes, there was. Hold on one second. Can we not install the long element name PTF?
The long element name PTF, as referenced in version 18, is is a significant impact because it changes many of the ISPF and will change the quick edit panels to accommodate long elements. Pretty much you really need to install everything that has been published for the reason of dependencies between features and dependencies between fixed BTFs. There are people that, due to the size of the nature of a change, may elect to stop and like a incremental delivery prior to the large PTF, a large feature, and wait for that to become more mature before they install it in production. But generally, we highly recommend that all published PTFs, both service and feature PTFs, be installed. That's how they're tested. And as I said, there's a lot of dependencies between these things, and not installing all of them may lead to some unwanted surprises later when trying to install a PTF and the prerequisite available. I hope that answered the question.
And then there's one more in the Q&A box. It says, eventually when you get to 18.0.xx and nothing more will be added, will 18.1 be next or 19.0?
That's a very good question. It depends on the nature of the next release. That hasn't been determined yet. If it's going to be a significant release, we'll go to 19. If it is a minor thing that may be very quick to publish and we need to do it as a separate release, it would be probably use the release identifier. So the 18 is the version, and then the 0 that's there is the release number, actually.
All right, and then one more. Also, is there an expected EOL date for V17 to be announced anytime soon?
As I said, the end of service is not end of life. It's end of service, which means that that you can have PTFs that have been already written available, but we won't create new PTFs. The end of service for 17 will get announced when version 18 becomes GA complete. Our guesstimate date is early next year for that to happen, and when we announce provide the alert for the end of service for 17, it's usually a 12 to 18 month window, so that there'll be plenty of time to do an upgrade.
Hey, Pete?
Yes.
Hey, it's John Duicken here. How are you?
Oh, this is so much better. Hi, John.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm the one, I've got a vested interest at the site that I'm currently at. They're an extremely large Endevor site, and they rely exclusively on CARS, the CA recommended support. So I'm struggling mightily with this incremental delivery process. It is part of the learning curve that I'm trying to impart at the site. But at this time, their normal standard is we don't apply maintenance unless it comes in the stack and unless it comes from CA and it came in CARS. Okay. Now, my challenge, and this is just a thought that I'd like to leave with you, is I'm not saying that I don't agree with the incremental delivery process or anything of the sort. I completely understand why you've gone in that direction, but here's my but. What I'd like to see is after you've done the incremental delivery, send it into the CARS process so that if it just bubbles back there for 2 to 3 months and then eventually shows up in the stack. Because what's happening is I'm stuck at 18.0. I can't put all the new features in, and they're a growing site in terms of the re-architecture that I'm there to do. And if the stuff showed up 2, 3, 4, 6 months later, I don't care, but I'd still like to get the stuff eventually. And the second thing that they said, because they don't understand or embrace the incremental rollout process, is they're saying, well, we don't think, because it's not part of CARS, we don't think those PTFs are supported. Are those PTFs supported? Well, I heard you say earlier, yes, they are.
Absolutely.
But again, as part of this whole holistic picture, it would be nice after you've done a sprint and you've done the release, send it off on its way If it takes 2 to 3 months, there are those clients like mine that I'm working at that don't care. That's fine.
That makes a lot of sense, John. I'll take that suggestion back. And see
Excellent. That's what I want to hear. Thank you. Thanks, Pete. I'll shut up again.
Sure. Yeah, don't shut. Feel free to ask questions as we go through it. And anybody else who can get off mute or has a way to get an audio, that would be great. So I'm gonna move forward to the next slide here. So here's some facts. The fix and feature PTFs are only created for the current code line, and what that means is that if we've done incremental 2 and we're creating a fix PTF, it's going to be based on incremental 2. We don't go back and individually support and write maintenance for old incremental releases or old incremental delivery PTFs. So we have to stay current on the code line, and that goes back to the other question about picking and choosing what's installed. And just for the need to have a common code line that we can use for our regression testing, our automated regression testing support, for a number of reasons, it only makes sense that everybody stays as current as possible. Though I do understand the other side from your perspective about too much change. It needs to be controlled. So we have to find some kind of way to mitigate that. As I said earlier, incremental delivery PTFs can be skipped because they're cumulative. You can go straight to the most current if you want. It's recommended. And usually there's no big surprises when we try to make it so there's no big surprises in what we're delivering. Anything that requires a file conversion or something, and one would think that ISPF panel change is one of those big things, and maybe it is, but it was kind of necessary for version 18. But we generally won't deliver a file conversion type thing where you have to do that in the middle of a release. That would be reserved for a new release. So as I said, incremental 0 is a foundation release, and when it becomes an incremental release becomes GA complete, we only publish fixes. So this is the way the process is intended to work, and that we've lined up with our, for those of you who remember the old DAR system, it's been replaced with Ideation. Our cloud, our waterfall development process has been replaced with Agile Scrum, and our waterfall beta GA releases have been replaced with continuous delivery. So we've become a lot more agile and current in terms of what we're delivering. Let's go through these processes. For those of you who aren't familiar with Ideation, you should be by now. It is a global user community-based facility that you can enter requests to for other people to see and comment on and vote on. And when those I got the wrong place here. I did. Excuse me. And when the ideas and enhancement requests get enough comments and votes, and we have the resources lined up, the ideation will take them into the Scrum process, which is our Agile methodology, where we have Scrum teams and sprints, which are the periods that we're working on the release, as well as the stories, which are what the features are that are coming in from the ideation backlog. And then as priorities and project management things make sense, those things will be taken in and delivered, developed and delivered, reviewed with the validation partners for MVP status, and then published as a PTF and included in the incremental delivery PTF. So specifically about the incremental delivery PTFs, in that when it's published, all MVP PTFs have already been published. And this is just a roll-up. It's a prereq of those, as well as a prereq of all prior feature PTFs, as well as a public prereq of all maintenance PTFs, So basically one of these incremental delivery units really will bring you completely up to date with all of the components of the product, and you can rest assured that there's no surprises, nothing necessary for you to go back and check for missing PTS and that kind of thing. And this will give you a little bit of a picture of what I've been trying to say, in that using 16, 17, and 18 releases as an example, starting with V16 release becoming GA complete, and that's the red diamond, and then that will trigger the V17 release getting started, the incremental 0. And the dots in the V17 line are either yellow or gold or black, or we have a red circle. The blacks are the product fixed PTS, the gold are the feature PTS, and the blue circles are the incremental delivery PTS. So this is how we started, that we would deliver these things, and then when we got to enough at the end of each sprint, we would package them up and hold them until we had everything ready, and then publish it as an incremental delivery PTF. Eventually, in the case of V17 in the center, it becomes GA complete, the other red diamond, and at that point we issue the end of service notification for V16, as you'll see there. And we'll commence the process for V18, where we'll publish the foundation for V18 and then beginning the delivery of the new features.
Hey, Pete.
Yes.
It's John again. Yeah, it's John again. I'm just going to point out something that tripped me up as well in this process. Again, bear with me because, again, I got introduced to cars with a slap across the head, so this is I'm going to beat a bit of a dead horse. But one of the things that occurred is right now, because 18 doesn't exist in cars, it basically, the perception is 17 is the supported release of Endevor, and why in heaven's name did we go through the effort of upgrading from 16 to 18 when 18 doesn't show up in cars and it's 17? And I was actually even advised from someone at CA that, well, don't put 18 in, put 17 in then. And it's like, no. So I'm just pointing out, again, one of the incongruities that currently exists. So just FYI.
That's a good point. I'm making notes here. So the fact that the 18 is indeed GA, but the fact that it's not included in cars, people think that indeed it's not really a GA release. It's not really supported.
That's the perception. I mean, that's what cars is marketed under.
Right. Okay. So going to the point that the support person probably was thinking was that there are a number of customers that don't feel that they're in a position to install new features. For one reason or another, what they would prefer to do is wait until our release becomes GA complete before they do an installation. And they probably misread what you were saying, John, in thinking that you were one of those sites that wanted to be like the old days, which is only give me the GA release and I only want fixed PTS after that. So that is the difference. The
interesting incongruity that happens then is that, okay, if we only go with GA complete, then current release plus -1 means 16 is still being supported.
Okay. This is a very good conversation. We actually have a different way of determining the support, and that is when we issue an end of support notice, we do that for all GA releases that don't already have an end of support notice. And in the case of Endevor, we have 16 and 17, and 16 went end of support, I believe, in May or June, I think, of this year. And it's based on the end of support notice, not on the number of GA releases. So.
Oh, I know. Yeah. I hear you.
There's no -1 kind of thing. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And what I've tried to indicate to them is right now with this incremental delivery, incremental release business, it's like sort of being pregnant. It's sort of GA, but not really GA, but it is GA, but it's not GA. It's a difficult concept to come to when you're an extremely large site that is reluctant.
Process. Yes.
Well, not just the old process, but they also don't like churn on their systems. I mean, right now I've got Endevor installed on at least 10 different LPARs. So to churn out an incremental release across 10 LPARs is just not realistic.
Really? Because it's PTF, so it shouldn't be.
We'll chat at CA World.
Sure. Okay. Oh, good.
And I'll get off the phone again.
Okay.
I'd kind of like to hear about that chat also. This is Sherry.
Hi, Sherry.
So if you publish it somewhere, it'd be nice because I'd like to be included in that.
Specifically about the conversation about supporting or installing GA incremental delivery releases. Is that the conversation?
Yes, that's the conversation I'd like to be included in. Maybe one of the cocktail hours before it starts or something.
Okay.
Yeah, cocktail. We need to throw alcohol into this. That sounds like a great idea.
It always helps.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, hi guys, it's Rose. I just want to maybe extend this to the wider audience, and perhaps, we can work with Len and hold an office hours specifically dedicated to this topic. It sounds like it's something that the wider audience could certainly benefit from, and not to take away from any extracurricular activities that we want to engage in at CA World, but I want to make sure that we offer it to everybody and don't exclude anybody.
Good point, Rose. Thank you for that. Okay. So just going back to the alcohol conversation, this WebEx is being recorded and will be available to everyone for replay. So. Okay, so anyway, moving on to the continuous delivery. We started out with that incremental delivery process, and then we realized that the batching up features and publishing them wasn't so agile, because it actually caused us problems at CA, because we would have create bottlenecks in our delivery process by holding on to things when they were actually ready to publish. So with our validation partners, with incremental delivery number 4, we decided to change things a bit and to publish all features as soon as they were deemed available as individual PTFs, which I mentioned before. And then at each end of sprint review cycle, we would take all of those that had been published and then include them into the incremental delivery PTF, so that we have the best of both worlds, is that for features that people want right away, not even wait for the incremental delivery, they can get them, or for those that want the ease of installing a single incremental PTF to get everything else, that is available as well. So it really doesn't change the process, it just makes more options available. Are there any questions on this part? Okay. So user-driven ideation, this is what I was talking about earlier, where our old product enhancement process, which was a system called DAR, that had been replaced by our community site, where you can enter ideas or enhancement requests, or look for enhancement requests that are out there. I know that there are people on this call that are very active in that community, and add comments and add votes, so that it helps us to understand what is really important, where people are looking for requirements. It also helps us to understand some areas of the product that may be needing some attention that we weren't aware of. So that ideation is incredibly valuable, and that is open to everybody. The customer validation part, which I've been referring to quite a bit already throughout this presentation, is actually gives the people that are members, and this is not so restricted, that are members of our validation group, early access to the features while they're being developed. As I said, we do demonstrations along the way, usually after, I would say, on a monthly basis, and get feedback, and we get that MVP voting. So that's pretty important as well. If you want to have a say in how a feature is being done before it gets published, I would certainly recommend doing that. The time requirement is pretty minimal. Generally, it's an hour and a half, about a month. Occasionally, we might have call a special meeting together to ask a specific question, not necessarily for a demonstration, but a question about where the team comes up and say, what's the best way to do this? And we're not really sure from a customer perspective, and we like to get the validation partners' input. So that is something I would really recommend that everybody join if possible. You can send an email to Rose, as her email is on there, or to me if you'd like to join. So this is going into the second phase of this presentation, talking specifically about the features that have been published and the sequence and why and what we did. I'd like to stop for a second and open it up again to ask if there's any more questions on the process before we get into this section. I noticed that you guys got quiet when I mentioned that this was being recorded. So don't be bashful. Okay, no questions. So I'm going to be going through the history of version 18 starting in August and up to today. So we delivered Incremental 0, and I advertised Incremental 0 as the foundation release that is basically the equivalent functionality of the current GA complete release. So when 18 went out, it had the same functionality as 17. The idea of having it the same is to allow you to install it without having to worry about new validation of new features and set a baseline. We did use the opportunity to remove the Endevor CA Roscoe interface, the IBM Infoman interface, and the CA Netman interface from the product. If you are using Roscoe, Roscoe has a facility that I think every Roscoe Endevor customer uses, and that is the BTSO feature of Roscoe, which can simulate ISPF, and people just use regular Endevor through that facility. So that old Endevor Roscoe produced interface really wasn't of much value. So because this was removing a lot of components, this was really deemed something that we needed to do on a release level, and it was removed at the Incremental 0. With Incremental 1, we were addressing a audit capability that many people had been asking for, and a lot of people have actually solved over the lifetime of Endevor through their own customizations, usually through user exits, and that is to prevent package approvers from approving their own changes. And with the Incremental 1, we introduced that capability, and if an approver had made a change either to element within the package or to the package itself, like created the package, they would not be able to be an approver, and they would get a message saying they've been disqualified for that particular package. They could still approve other packages, but not for that package. We also, with Incremental 1, delivered some Endevor for natural integration features for configuration, setting default panel options, and that kind of thing that was necessary for some of our natural users. We also, with Incremental 1, added a text scan then there's a typo in it. It says text scan and go-to capability, sort of like in ISPS just doing a find command, and that's what this provided. And that was for Endevor elements for productivity changes. So those were the things that first went out with Incremental 1. And then with Incremental 2, which went out in December of last year, we introduced the web services installation and configuration improvements. That we found that a lot of people were having difficulty because they were in a different world dealing with Unix system services, security, text files, a lot of things that were kind of new, as well as the Tomcat and web services, that we made an attempt to simplify the configuration options and provided better guardrails so that people wouldn't have so many errors to deal with or issues to deal with. And so that's what was the focus of Incremental 2 for the web services installation. We also added the capability, this is left over from version 17 with the alter action. There was a request to not only secure the alter action, but can you also secure the data that is being modified by the alter action. The alter action was published so that people could change CCIDs and comments and processor groups without having to perform a generate action, for example. It's been a long sought after feature. When we, with our validation partners, we got it working pretty good, but they also highlighted the need that they would like to make some things available to their end users, but they don't want them to be able to change a CCID, for example. So the extended security integration ESI was enhanced with version 18 to address that request. We also began our support for USS Java support on the mainframe in Endevor, and we relaxed our syntax, element name syntax, to allow embedded blanks, and that was through batch at that point. And something that was kind of a funny thing with Incremental 2, one of the validation partners said it would be really handy if the new Endevor documentation, the DocOps site URL was available on the changes panel, so that people could go directly or know what the URL was to go get the documentation. And when we did that here, and we also discovered with our emulator that we could actually click on that URL and it would take us directly into our documentation. And we learned that that was a emulator option, and we happen to have an emulator that supported that. So that's not a guarantee that that will work for you, but that's something I would look for. It's very, very handy. Are there any questions on this stuff? You guys are kind of quiet. Okay.
Actually, Pete, it's John here again.
Hi, John.
I'm going to step into a bit of a landmine for a second here, but could I get you and/or Rose to comment on field-developed solutions that are occasionally being encouraged on the community website? Personally, I'm extremely reluctant to implement any FDS at any time because, in my view, they're really nothing more than customizations that are being imposed over top of Endevor that really make an upgrade path a real pain in the butt. And so,
yes,
based on that, what?
Good question. I can answer it.
I'm curious about a comment on FDSs.
There's good and bad, and you certainly identified the bad aspect of it. And there's other bad aspects in terms of support as well. Field developed features generally are specific enhancements for a specific reason, and sometimes they are of value to other customers, and we have people in our services organization that built a facility, for an example, called I think FTP, which is the long name facility, and there was a lot of people that were interested, a lot of customers that were interested in that, and elected to install it with understanding that it was used at your own risk, and that it would eventually be replaced by out-of-the-box functionality. The good aspect of the FDP in this example would be that it serves sort of as a validation or as a prototype of what the product team is building, in that we get a sense of what works, what doesn't work, and that kind of thing. So people that are willing to install and get value out of installing FDPs do have an opportunity to get back to us and share what they think is the good and the bad of those things. So that's the statement of it. It is not really supported. Well, it is not supported. It is used at your own risk, but we think that it's up to as long as everybody is aware of the restrictions and lack of support for those things and the concern about upgrade, that people should be able to make that choice. Does that make sense, John?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I'm just, yeah. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to move up to incremental 3 because we've got a lot of increments to get through. And increment 3, we added an echo facility, which is more the web services configuration enhancements, so that once the configuration was in place, this echo utility could be used to ensure that the plumbing was in place as an easy way to make sure the configuration was right. So again, it will reduce the errors and let things get done quicker and more efficiently, rather than go live and find out that things don't work. With our end of sprint review of the enhanced approver disqualification option on the prior one, it was pointed out to us that the global on-off option in the optional feature table to activate this option was much too large of a sledgehammer implementation, and that a much better way would be to provide an approver group by approver group capability to implement the disqualification option. And what we learned through our validation partners is that there are approvers at the lower levels of the life cycle, down in the development area, where it's quite common that the approvers will be the developers and are using packages for preparation for getting to production, but they're the ones that really needed to put together and get the initial cast and promotion out of their branch or sandbox. Whereas higher up in the life cycle, in the production or QA, in that case, approvers are not the people that made the changes, and those we do need the separation of power. So that became clear, and we were able to respond to that by enhancing Endevor to the approver group to allow the disqualification to be turned on at that level. With incremental 4, this I mentioned, this is where we came up with the incremental delivery PTF mechanism, so that we can make it easier for everybody to install and get up to date with the maintenance and features, as well as know where they are at when looking at a panel or a report to know what release they're running. I did not mention the documentation earlier, and that with incremental deliveries is where we update the release notes for each delivery. We increment the release notes for what changed in the specific heads up on what's included in that incremental delivery, as well as the changes panel in the ISPF classic dialog will also contain a list of things that were delivered in each incremental delivery. Moving on to incremental delivery number 5 was the capability of logging admin actions. And this is one of those that is a very good example of Agile, where there was a lot of work done to implement the SMF logging, and there's actually a monitoring facility which is kind of new with this, and that if you don't want to use SMF, or you want, in addition to SMF, you can specify a data set, sequential data set that Endevor will write to this admin record changes. So this is something that we heard from very large financial customers that they needed to ensure that privileged users' activities were monitored just like regular users' activities with element action activity. The example of how Agile fits into this is that the API and CSV and reporting capability for these new SMF records have not been delivered yet. They will be delivered later on in version 18, but we wanted to get this enhancement out so that people that need it can start recording those actions now, that activity. With Incremental 6, came from an old ideation request, was implementing, this is sort of focused on the administrator, a new parameter called conditional allocation. Alloc equals cond or no cond. And the value of this is that if you specify this on a DD statement, usually it would be a syslib data set DD. If it says alloc equal cond, then in the allocation fails, Endevor will put out a message saying that we couldn't find that data set, but we're going to continue with the allocation, the execution of the processor. The value of this is that where processors are shared across applications, some product teams may have more data sets that they need in the syslib concatenation than others. And this is a easy way to share a processor and allow that sharing to happen, or the same physical processor to be shared. Incremental 6 also introduced a kind of a smaller change to the Eclipse UI, and that is there's something called tooltips in Eclipse, which are icons that are used in the views. And with the tooltips, you hover over an icon, and it will tell you what that column is all about. So it's just a usability kind of thing. And that's what we've delivered to date. I will tell you that the next incremental delivery will be coming very shortly. The PTFs for the ISPF long name version, or the first iteration of that, has been published, and the Eclipse UI package enhancement capability to perform Endevor package actions from the Eclipse UI. First phase of that has also been published. I think that was just published on Thursday or Friday of last week. We have a few other things that will be coming along, such as the where approver on a list package CSV request has been added, that filter, and an IT guidelines for the IT auditor as a knowledge article will also be published, and that's something that will be available. I think will be very useful. In fact, it came, the idea came from a member or attendee of the AppDev conference that we had here in Framingham last year, that these guidelines will be something that you could hand to an IT auditor, and they will be able to understand what the product is about and understand areas that they should look at, and we'll also have a checklist of the values that we kind of recommend, and they can compare against what the site implementation values are and can ask questions based on that. So we are looking at adding more knowledge articles through the version 18 process to help with the knowledge of what's going on and the how-to, and continually make the product more usable. So that's it for what I wanted to share with you. The community site, communities.ca.com, you guys know that because you're registered for this webinar, but that's also where you would go for the ideation in case you're not using ideation. And please let us know if you are interested in becoming a validation partner. This is not on a release basis, it's really on a continuous basis as we go through the process of adding new capabilities to the product. We built up a team that we're working together between the development team and the engineering team here and our customers, and it's working out very well, in my opinion. So are there any questions at this point?
I don't see any. So I think we can wrap up, Pete. Thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you for all of our attendees today. I'll probably get the excuse me, the replay of this session out in the community later today, or worst case, first thing tomorrow. So thanks very much, and we'll see you the next time we have one of these.
Okay. Thank you very much, Len.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, all our customers.